Hey everybody, this is a special episode of Eye Care Leadership Live. This entire show is an episode of Scaling Practice Management with Jakub Grajcar. Had a wonderful conversation with Jakub, and I just loved it so much I wanted to share it on my own podcast feed. I hope you enjoy the show. We talk about a lot of great things related to culture and HR. So here's the show with Jakub.
Hello, 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 everyone, and welcome back to Scaling Practice Management, the show where we help practice managers grow smarter, not harder. My name is Jakub Grajcar. I'm the head of marketing at Talkie AI, where we help medical practices stop the phone from ringing off the hook and unburden their front desk team with our AI medical receptionist agents. And we're already helping over 300,000 patients every month with that. My guest on the show today is Mike Lyons. Mike, welcome to the show. Great to have you here.
Thank you.
Yes, excellent. Mike is is an HR consultant specializing in ophthalmology and healthcare practices through his company Seasoned Advice. And by the way, I love the name and I love the branding, with the salt and pepper shakers. That's great. Mike, you're also the host of Eye Care Leadership Live, of course, a podcast for ophthalmology practice managers and leaders. So very much, pretty much a sister podcast to Scaling Practice Management in some respects. And then before going out on your own, my notes say you spent nearly 6 years building the HR department from the ground up at Austin Retina Associates. Sounds like a great story, and I wonder if we're going to dig into that as well. Mike, in any case, welcome to the show. Great to have you here today.
Jakub, thank you so much. I'm so glad you reached out. And man, let's jump in. Let's talk HR and all things leadership.
Yeah, yeah. We're gonna talk about that after we do the warm-up game. But before that, I'm reminded of kind of the context of our conversation. I think we met kind of indirectly through Jacqueline Waterhouse, right? Because she was a
Okay.
guest a few episodes ago on this show, and then through that on LinkedIn, I saw you. You spoke with her as well. I think on I Care Leadership Live. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, yeah. And when I saw that, I discovered you, and then we had our chat, and now we're recording this conversation.
Yes. You know what? It's amazing how people get connected through LinkedIn and podcasting. It's been a powerful combo for me.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, my generation is in their mid 30s right now, and still a lot of people have this sense of cringe about LinkedIn that I don't really understand. I mean, I'm not saying spend your whole day and night on there, right? It's not there for that. But it can be such a useful tool in the professional sense, and even a little bit besides. And again, this conversation, that's how it happened. And that's why we get to play the warm-up game today.
Yeah.
Okay, so the warm-up game has two stages. First, you'll pick some numbers, and then you'll pick a category. Please pick three numbers from 1 to 10 to start.
Oh my gosh, three numbers. 2, 7, and 8.
Okay, so the categories you picked are food, talent, and weekend. Which one do you want?
Food.
Food,
I'm
okay.
seasoned advice after all.
Right, of course. Right, we hit a good one with this one. So, so the question would be, well, what's your favorite meal in the world, or something that brings back memories, something that you like to cook, maybe? Let's treat the category very broadly. Where do you want to go with it?
Absolutely. Well, I was a personal chef for 5 years. I don't know if you
Oh
know this.
gosh.
And so, there is definitely foods I love to cook. I love Thai food. I have to say that is probably my number one cuisine, a Thai curry. I love the herbs that we get to throw in there. You get some acidity, you get a little bit of sweetness, a lot of, salty from the fish sauce. You can put whatever kind
Mm.
of protein. Just put that over some jasmine rice. Give me a little mango sticky rice for dessert, and I'm happy.
Stop it, stop it. I haven't had lunch yet. You're killing me over
Hey,
here.
you picked the category. No, I mean, I guess I picked it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's what the warm-up game is all about. That's amazing. You're a man after my own heart here, Mike. I don't have a lot of kind of equipment or like spices in my kitchen, but the ones I do have that kind of go deeper, outside of the regular salt and pepper, I do have the curry, the oyster sauce, a little bit of soy sauce because I do love to go there. Even when I have, because I'm Polish, right? Even when I have pierogi, right?
Mm.
I occasionally season them with like curry and give it a twist like that
Yeah.
just to make them a little bit more interesting. So I love that. So what is your like top favorite Thai dish?
Mm. I think it would have to be, I think is it Musman? I'm trying to remember Penang. Penang curry with beef, tender beef. It's got to be real tender, like a brisket or a chuck or something like that. Love it. It has the lime leaves in it. I love lime leaves. They lend this great flavor. Run out,
Yeah.
get yourself a Penang curry today, everyone.
That's amazing. Yeah, lime leaves. We when I meet with my friends for board games, and some listeners, regular listeners of the show will know this, that I do board games sometimes. We did put lime leaves in like our drinks as we
Oh,
play. So so that brings back good memories.
wow.
I've got a game
Okay.
lined up in just 2 days from today, so that might be part of the equation there.
Hmm.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, so last stop while we're on this chapter of the conversation. So you were a personal chef, you said, for 5 years. What's your top cooking tip then?
Ooh, top cooking tip. Have a sharp knife. So
Ooh,
many of our knives are dull. We
yeah.
have these knives, we buy these knives, or we get a gift, and we never sharpen it, and
Mm.
it's unsafe, and it makes it harder to cut. It's more dangerous to cut. So own a sharp knife and learn how to cut, because that is the gateway to home cooking. So
Yeah,
the knife,
yeah.
the knife.
You need to be able to enjoy the process, right? And if you have a dull knife, it just makes everything so much harder and so much less appealing. I totally agree. Even though, I mean, I have a pretty new set of knives right now, but they might be already due for sharpening. So,
Hmm.
thank you for
Yeah.
reminding me, calling
I
me
would
out.
love to come over and sharpen your knives for you, Jakob.
Maybe one day that'll happen. Awesome. So, while we're on the subject of number one tip and kind of now pivoting to the main
Sure.
subject of the show,
You can swerve.
it's time for the number one tip question sent your way. So, Mike, what is your number one tip, on the other hand, for growing a healthcare practice?
Well, you cannot grow a practice without people, and it takes leaders to hire well and to manage well. And so, if you ever plan, if you're a doctor or if maybe you're a single manager, if you ever plan on growing, you're going to have managers. And so, have great managers is my one and most important tip for growing a healthcare practice.
Okay, I think a lot of people are gonna nod their heads at that, but fantastic managers, where to find them and how to actually hire them and get them on board.
There's a whole, yeah, there's a whole, you could write a book, and people have written many books about how to do
Sure.
that. And yes, of course, it's sounds simple, but obviously, as we know, it's very difficult to do. And that's why I exist. That's why my whole job exists, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. And if you were to give somebody like some top level tips for that, or like even how to get started, or the most important criteria, what do you usually talk about?
Oh man. First of all, hire for people skills.
Hmm.
That is the number one thing that you need in a good manager. Never promote someone that is lacking that.
Hmm.
Number two, make it really clear what you need from them. You know,
Hmm.
just like you're managing a technician in ophthalmology or a medical assistant in, cardiology or whatever, you need to be clear with managers about what kind of management you want to get from them. And this is where a lot of, doctors fall short, or because they haven't led, they haven't seen good leadership, and so they kind of just hire the most reliable, experienced person, that kind of falls into their lap, which is understandable. That's what I would do if I didn't know any better, right?
Hmm.
But a lot of times that person just doesn't have the leadership qualities, and they don't know what they should be doing. And so they do things that they shouldn't do, and they create problems for your clinic. And so hire people with people skills and make it clear. And if you don't know what you want, study it, research it, work with, a consultant or an advisor, get some advice from a peer or a colleague, get a job description. But don't make that mistake of putting that wrong person in the job and not being clear.
Okay, I love that. I think I love this enough to pitch a tent here for a
All
second and
right,
to
let's do
explore this
it.
area a little bit more, right? Let's dig deeper. So you said hire for people skills. I mean, I have some experience with that also from, from my past experience. I used to run a team of 10 content marketers. So at some point I was hiring like my middle management, right? And looking for, for people skills with those people. And the specific things that come to mind is how do you actually check for people skills for something that might come up, months down the road
Yeah.
when you just have this one hiring process. It might be a little bit lengthier for a manager, but still you have, a few meetings, maybe some tasks to do along the way. So what would be the best way to tackle this? How to actually unearth whether somebody has people skills or not within the recruitment process?
Yeah, so first of all, if you can hire from within, that is helpful because that gives you a chance to see what you're getting before you
Of
promote
course.
someone. So you can see, is Karen a good communicator? Is Karen encouraging and positive? And so I guess my first tip is define what good people skills looks like. It's great to say great, good people skills, but what does that mean? For me, that's encouraging. For me, that means they can make a request of someone else without being condescending, and they can do it in a clear way. They can confront difficult situations with, some level of grace and confidence.
Hmm.
I would say those are three pillar skills that you need to have. They can set a vision. They're not afraid to get in front of their team and say, "Hey, this is where we are now, and this is where we want to get to." Some level of transparency, ability to be transparent. And anyway, man, I could go on, but so define what leadership is. Try to promote from within, which gives you the advantage of verifying that that person has those skills. But if you do have to hire from outside,
Hmm.
you want to try to get someone with some leadership experience if you can. And so then when you're interviewing them, you can ask them about real world leadership situations that they've handled. I'm a believer also of looking at their past, right? Let's say someone has never had a management role. Well, maybe they've led a group in school. Even going back to high school, maybe they volunteered somewhere and they became the chairman of the chess club, or
Yeah.
they led something in college, okay? And so you have a chance to demonstrate leadership skills in different ways. And it may take patience, it may take a lot of follow-up questions to kind of draw that out of a fairly inexperienced person. Tell me about that chess club. Like, well, how did you grow the membership? Or what happened when
Hmm.
someone wanted to quit? Or what happened when there was a conflict about, chess tournaments? How did you kind of resolve that? And so, like, you got to dive deep and see how they think and can they come up with good answers and things. And then you were talking to references, right? So, oh, let me talk to the person that at the college that led the chess club. Let me talk to them and see what they have to say about how you ran the chess club, or the manager that was your manager at that, dental office that you worked at. And so these are all data points. These are all data points that could help you make a good decision.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of these I've tried in the past, and I can also attest that they do work. It's always tricky, but definitely talking about specific situations. The chess club, I've never led that, but before I had a management position, my management experience was running a Toastmasters club, for
Oh,
example. Shout,
Jakub, we have that in common.
seriously?
Yeah, I was the president of a Toastmasters club in Orlando, Florida, and
Oh,
a mentor told me, "Hey, if you want to develop leadership skills, join the Toastmasters club." And I joined. I became the president of the club. I became the area governor over the little
oh,
area.
congrats.
Yeah, man, power trip there. But Toastmasters, I
Definitely.
can't endorse Toastmasters enough for someone who wants to develop their leadership, because it's like a built-in little opportunity to lead people. Hopefully, did you have a
Yeah.
great experience with that?
Yes, amazing. And I'm so glad I got an excuse to talk about it on this show. Absolutely the same experience. That was one of the best things I've ever done for my career to join a Toastmasters club. The public speaking skills, I'm using them right now. And the leadership, experience that I could bring into all my future engagements, all the rest of my career. And it was also a mentor, a coach who told me or advised me to give it a try. And it clicked in such a big way. So anybody listening to this, look up your local Toastmasters chamber. The great thing about it is that you've got clubs all over the world.
All over.
From Orlando over here to Poznań, Poland. Like we got multiple clubs even here. So you'll be able to find one close to you, and it's such a great investment.
Yeah, or start a club if there is not a convenient one and you have a big enough
Yeah.
organization, start one.
Yeah. There's great resources for that as well. We'll put Toastmasters in the show notes. I
Yeah.
can't believe it took me like 20 plus episodes to mention that, but that's amazing that I had a feeling, I had an inkling. Excellent. What were we talking about even? Right,
Leadership,
hiring.
yeah.
Yeah. Hiring great leaders. So I want to also pull on the thread of transparency.
Hmm.
Do you have any advice for like managing a leader, managing a manager? So do you have any favorite tools? Is it all spreadsheet based? Do you keep a running Google Doc? I mean, these are tactics, right?
Mm,
The approach is also important, but I feel like I would love to give the watchers and listeners something actionable that they can actually use day to day
yeah.
as they manage their manager because they've got such an important role at their
Yeah.
practice.
Okay, for sure. Number one tip is meet with them regularly and talk
Mm,
about management. So, what does that mean? I'm talking about meeting once a week. How's the team doing? Who is doing well? Who's giving you challenges? How are you dealing with the people that are giving you challenges? What positions are we hiring for right now? Okay. Are we getting good candidates? How are you going about interviewing them? What types of answers are they giving? You know what? I think I want to sit in on a couple interviews and
mm,
see how that process goes. You know what? I'm also going to talk to some of the employees that you manage and just check in with them and say, hey, how's everything going? And build a relationship with the people like, two steps down, quote unquote,
mm.
so that
Yeah.
they know that they can come to you if there's an issue, right? So you're having FaceTime with your manager and their direct reports. What else? And metrics are good, right? Hey, how many employees? Are we losing employees? What's our turnover? Why are they leaving? Um, Gosh, what else? Let's look at our new hires. How are they doing? Give me an assessment on our performance of how well we're hiring, that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
communication. It's all about talking and listening, I think, to create accountability, and
Yeah.
that
And
will, yeah, result in better management.
all clear on that. And operationally, would you keep that, running Google Doc of the conversation, something you can refer to, or have you found something else that works here?
I think a Google Doc is perfectly fine. I like
Mm,
to document, yeah, the things that we talk about, the feedback maybe I gave, or the
yeah.
requests that I made, so that everyone can see what we talked about and what maybe needs to be followed up next time.
Yeah, I hear you. I can definitely give a big plus one for the skip level conversations.
Hmm.
So when I used to run this larger team, I felt like that was crucial, really. At one point, I brought on a manager who was maybe not the best pick for that position, and it was the skip level conversations that made me realize that we needed to make a change. We
Hmm.
ultimately ended up letting that team lead go. But without those conversations, it would have been a much more difficult process. It would all have had to kind of boil over, right? And instead, we could kind of cut it off at the head in that particular situation. So you need that direct face time with the direct reports of your managers as well. If you can find the time for it, which is difficult, I understand, but it's time well invested. I wonder if you'll agree.
Yeah, and sometimes I would say 80% of it is just being visible and having
Mm,
informal conversations and making yourself accessible. It's the little conversations and touch points that build the trust so that when something big comes up, they feel like they can go to you, you know.
yeah.
So that's how you get that trust going.
I love that. I love that. Okay, so I feel like we explored this area a little bit. And I'm thinking as I'm recording these conversations lately, I keep asking myself like who am I going to send this episode to, right? And I think this one will send to anyone who is looking at kind of managing their people better,
Mm.
right? And let's see if we can kind of keep that frame for the rest of the
Yeah.
conversation. And you're the perfect person to talk with about this because you run seasoned advice, as we already mentioned. So you do this fractional HR work, And I wonder if you could paint a picture of us for us of what that typically looks like. Give us a little bit of the background, and what are the most common problems landing on your desk other than hiring managers, managing managers? What else is there?
HR encompasses so many things, but the biggest
Of course.
things that I help with, number one is helping managers to feel more confident
Hmm.
with every aspect of management. And so sometimes that's situational. And so what I mean by that is I've got an employee doing this thing that I don't like. How do I handle that? Give me some confidence to deal with that. Or I've got an employee with a medical issue and there's a little bit of friction there. How do I navigate that without creating risk? Um, and so giving advice and confidence, I think, is a big area of help. Another area is structural issues like, hey, I'm not sure our policies are right, or I'm not sure that we have the systems in place to hire effectively. I'm not sure that everything we're doing is legal. Or
Oh,
even scarier, I think everything we're doing is great. And come to find out, they're not doing everything right. And so, it's the things, a lot of times it's clinics that they know they don't know things, or they don't know what they don't know, right? They're smart enough to know that there's something I know we're not perfect, right? And so I would say giving confidence in situational and giving confidence that structurally they're doing things. And then the other thing that I do spend a lot of time on is just helping with recruitment,
mm,
helping find good employees, helping teach managers good good behaviors when it comes to interviewing and building good processes for that. I'll do the actual interviewing and phone screening and reviewing resumes and things like that. And that's a big help because that's a time consuming task for clinics to do.
mm.
Yeah.
It's very interesting, and a lot of threads to pull on here. Let's talk about confidence then for a moment. Do you think, like, what kind of lack of confidence are we dealing with here? Is it mm, grounded or like founded or unfounded is what I'm trying to land at here. Is there a real gap in, in the decision making skills or the level of information that the managers have, or is it more of like a literal, you need to believe in yourself type of issue? Is it more emotional? What do you typically find?
I typically find that there are actual knowledge gaps because so
Mm,
a lot of the businesses that I work with are are composed of leaders that they've never led anywhere else before. Maybe they've been a
mm,
long time manager in this clinic, 20 years or 10 years, or they've worked as an employee and then are recently promoted. And so they've never worked as a manager anywhere else, and they've certainly never worked in an organization that used, the very best management practices, the very best hiring and compliance. And so there's just simply things that they don't know, and there are simply things that they could do better. And a lot of times it is a quick process to give confidence, but sometimes it also, it most of the time, I guess, it takes repetition, right? Like multiple reps of hiring employees to learn what works, what doesn't, multiple repetitions of handling difficult situations to see, what's okay to do, what's not okay to do, and then over time those skills develop. And so that's one of the things I love to do is work directly with managers and new managers to show them why we do things a certain way and to help kind of guide them through those hiring decisions, those employment decisions, those policy questions so that they do start to build that confidence. And so seeing them then feel confident, a year or two later, is awesome.
So it's almost like, you're talking about repetitions. This kind of reminded me a little bit of, of the gym, right? So like, I feel like with management, the one trap that you can fall into is that you think you're doing repetitions, but you're really trying the same thing over and over,
Mm.
and you're not really experimenting with the way that you manage, right? If we talk about like literal fitness, I don't know if you've had this in your kind of YouTube or social media feed, but I see content all the time about how to like tweak the way you work out, for example, right? Or try this new exercise, it's going to help you. With management, this doesn't get floated so easily, right? Because it's a more, focused discipline. It's not something that everybody is engaged in. So I wonder for the, management curriculum, if you will, that you present to these inexperienced leaders, what's on there that you go through to kind of upskill them?
Mm. So one thing is communication, right?
Mm,
So having regular touch points with employees. Um, hey, that's important to do. Well, how do I do it? How do I make time for that? What do I talk about in those meetings? Um, Giving information, I'll give them information about how, effective hiring, questions to ask, what to look for in those questions, how to follow up, questions to ask when you're checking references, mindset around hiring, the
yeah,
mindset of we're not going to hire someone who's not a great fit, right? And so sometimes managers get into the mindset of, oh my gosh, I need someone now. Like, I just need to plug this hole. And
yeah,
they
yeah,
need someone to give them confidence that, you know what, you're actually going to be better off if you wait a little bit and get just a higher quality person. So sometimes it's technical, sometimes it's mindset, right? How do we look at this situation and realize that there is a long-term value to making a more strategic choice than a kind of a knee-jerk choice.
yeah. I understand. So
Yeah,
I mean, we could dig into all of these topics for a 1 hour episode each, I think,
for sure.
Uh, yeah. But, as a bit of instead, what I would love to ask you is, do you ever direct them to like some external resources, like books they should read? Do you have favorite recommendations for that?
I do. I do. I'm a huge fan of Patrick Lencioni. He has a couple of great books that I refer to often. One of them, which I think maybe is the one that summarizes everything the best, it is The Advantage. The Advantage
Hmm.
touches on so many things for leaders. But I also really like the Ideal Team Player, because the Ideal Team Player is a great book uh, for managers who are hiring. It talks about hiring hungry people who are hungry, humble, and smart. And then the
Hmm.
last book that I frequently recommend is called The Energy Bus by John Gordon, and it's all about it's all about cultivating the right team and the right vibe on your team. And the one rule he talks about that kind of sticks in my mind the most is we don't want energy vampires. No energy vampires on our team, meaning people who are negative, people who always turn things into what isn't going to work, right? We want people who have high energy and positive energy. And that's one of the things we look for when we hire and how we cultivate leadership.
Let's say, as a hypothetical exercise here, somebody heard what you just said and thought, oh gosh, maybe I'm sometimes a little bit negative in team
Yeah.
meetings. Maybe I'm a little bit of an energy vampire. Is there a way to help such people to turn things around, as if you will?
Um, Try that Penang curry, number one. Get that Penang curry in your stomach. That'll instantly change your mood.
Yeah.
Um,
Toastmasters too. That really helped me to I was my most optimistic self and most
uh,
passionate when I was there.
you
But
know,
keep going.
yeah, and I think that's a great point because you have to know yourself. You have to know what feeds your soul, but feeding yourself. And so for me, Toastmasters too, because I get to be around people and we're interacting and I'm putting into myself, right? So Toastmasters is about pouring into yourself. For you, maybe it's going for a walk. I always, when I was working in-house and I had to go to an office every day, I would go for a walk and just give myself some time for myself to get outside and think. And so find ways to pour into yourself. If you find that if you think you might be the energy vampire, maybe you're burning out. Maybe you've
Mm,
been putting everyone else ahead of yourself. And the last thing I would say is start a gratitude journal. Start writing down things you're grateful for. practice gratitude, and that will start to shift your mindset. It's like you talked about going to the gym and, pumping iron. Well, practicing gratitude is like developing your gratitude muscle. And when you're grateful, it's hard to be negative. All you start seeing more positive things than all these negative things.
That's so interesting.
Mm.
I should correct the record here. I typically work out at home, not at the gym. But that's just a detail. As for gratitude, do you know why I ask you this question? Is because I looked at my behavior on some meetings, over the last, let's say, I don't know, year or two, maybe a little bit more. And sometimes I'm the Debbie Downer on the meetings. People listening to the podcast will not know that because I'm my best self when I
Right.
record these, right? And I do run a gratitude journal, have been for almost 10 years now. But now I'm thinking about it, I think maybe I should kind of refocus that gratitude also towards the work context, right?
Yeah.
Because typically I'm noticing that now when I write down stuff in my gratitude journal, it's outside of work, and there's definitely a lot of elements inside my work environment that I'm grateful for as well. I mean, our excellent team, shout out to the Talkie team. If you're listening to this, you should be. I'm
You
telling you on
better.
Slack all
Yep.
the time, listen to the podcast. So I'm definitely that's meshing, that's connecting quite well. Let's stay on the subject of gratitude then for a little while longer, because I remember our conversation before the show, and you mentioned that this is an important part of the mindset, for running a practice successfully and just as a leadership tool. Okay, gratitude as a leadership tool. Tell me more about that. How does that actually work? Why should leaders actually put that higher on their agenda?
Oh man, I'm so glad you asked me that. Gratitude is like the Swiss Army knife of leadership because,
Hmm.
first of all, it is going to change your mood. It's going to change your attitude. It's going to change the way you show up in your clinic every day. Um, and so you're taking care of yourself. And the other awesome thing about gratitude is it will make you more positive at work. It'll make sure you're not an energy vampire. It will train you to see little things as being worthy of appreciation. So, an example, you have an employee, you have a receptionist in your medical office, and they show up every day. They're kind of quiet, um, and they don't really make a splash, but they show up every day. And you may say to yourself, well, you're supposed to show up every day. Why should I praise you for that? But if
Hmm.
you are truly practicing gratitude, then you would absolutely say to that person, "Hey, Sally, you know what? I'm so great. You're always here. I can count on you to be here." And that means so much to me. They say sometimes in the sports world that the best ability is availability. And that means that like being
Okay.
present is incredibly valuable. And so, yes, thank you for being here. Like, it means so much, right? Because when I look around, I see Sam calling in and I see Joe like coming in late. But I can count on you. I mean, you wouldn't say all that stuff, but being grateful. And the reason why this is such a powerful tool is because people want to know that they're making a difference. They want to know they're making a difference. They want to know that you noticed. You know what? Jakub never notices that I'm here every day. They go home to their girlfriend, boyfriend, spouse. Jakub never, I'm there every day, and he just never
Okay.
mentions anything. I don't think he cares about me. And so you've got to mention it. You've got to show that you're noticing. And then the
Hmm.
other thing, when you are expressing appreciation, by the way, is you want to say why. So,
Hmm.
Sally, you're here every day. I truly appreciate that. And that means, when patients come in, they won't have to wait in a line to check in. There's always a smiling face because you're here. And if you weren't here, they might have to wait, or they might not, be in a rush, and we might get inaccurate, information because we're all rushing around. And so just having you here every day, it's great. And I appreciate, and you always have a smile. Thank you. And so that two-part thing of what's is what I noticed and this is why it matters is so key. So anyway, back to the point is gratitude is so powerful for you and for changing the culture. Talk about energy bus, man, gratitude is where it all starts.
I love that. I absolutely do. And I really like how you mentioned in particular to point out the second order effects, so to speak, of, of the work that, or just the effects. I don't think I need to use second order here. Just the effects of the work that the people are putting in. I'm typically on the other end of the spectrum here. I mean, I love appreciating other people, to the point where sometimes I wonder if there's a flip side to it. I wonder what you would say to somebody who might say that, okay, if I praise them too much, they'll be spoiled rotten, They won't be able to act on feedback. They'll think that everything is totally fine when actually they still have things to work on, and how to actually strike that balance. I wonder what you'll say.
Hmm. Well, to that person, I would say that's a really dumb way to think.
Okay.
Because you can't give too much. Now, if there's a person that needs to improve, we do have to counterpoint by giving some constructive feedback. I would never
Mm,
say just be like Sally Sunshine all the time and never give constructive feedback. But if I had to tell you to do one thing, it would probably to be grateful, because what most people are doing the right thing most of the time. And so you want to reinforce that so that they will continue that. But you also have to give constructive feedback. You have to put that in
mm,
there. And you need to do it quickly and privately and clearly. And you need to give the reason. Again, just like with gratitude. Why? Why is this an issue? Thomas, I've noticed that you've been, coming in late quite a bit, and it makes your coworkers frustrated, and it kind of puts us behind. The doctor notices, and he kind of grumbles at me, and it just kind of hurts us overall. So, can you work on getting here on time? You've got to do that, or else, maybe people will think, "Oh, I'm perfect," but more importantly, your coworkers, your employees are going to get ticked off because Thomas isn't showing up, and you're not going to be
mm.
getting the results you want. And so, don't make the mistake of never giving constructive feedback. But you can't at the same time, you can't spoil your employees. With too much gratitude. No, I've never heard of that. I've never seen that. It has never happened.
Okay, okay, interesting. And I like your stance on that, definitely. So, let's go deeper into the constructive feedback part of it then, because I feel like, I mean, that's a classic, right? For any leader, you'll never be 100% happy with everything your team does, and sometimes you have to course correct. The initial conversation, I feel like that's not the most difficult part of it. The difficult part comes when it's a repeat offense, so to
Mm.
speak, right? If if this person you just mentioned, if they keep coming late to work and it keeps reoccurring, does the tone change? Does your approach change as it keeps repeating? If it does.
I think the approach definitely changes. I don't know if the tone has to change, right? And
Hmm.
so, what I mean by that is constructive feedback should never be shaming. It should never be condescending. It doesn't need to be angry or emotional any kind of way. And so, when we talk about
Hmm.
tone, that's kind of where my mind goes. However, yes, you do need to change the approach. You need to change the wording. And so you need to make reference to the fact that, hey, we've talked about this before, um, and I haven't seen a change. I asked you if you would improve. I haven't seen an improvement. And so now, not only have you continued to do that behavior, but you've said that you would improve and you haven't improved. And so, we kind of have an issue here. There's a pattern. And so, this is when you need to start documenting the
Hmm.
performance. And this is something that a lot of managers just fail to do. I've had so many clients, so many managers that I've worked with who've come to me and said, I've got to get rid of William today. I'm tired of
Hmm.
him. The doctor is tired of William. And I say, okay. I say, what kind of documentation have we got? And often we have no documentation. And so that creates risk for you. Number one, it creates risk. Number two, maybe even more importantly, it's going to really upset William because he's never probably been told, let's be honest, he's probably never been told clearly that there was a problem. And so now you look like a big jerk, and you are
Hmm.
kind of a jerk if you're going to fire William. And so don't be a jerk. Be clear. Documentation is actually kind because it gives them clear direction. and gives them, and I most of the time people do improve, I would say. Most of the time people do improve when they're given clear feedback, and especially if it's in writing. But if
Mm.
not, you've got it there and it will protect you legally.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely see that part of the equation as well. So could you expand a little bit on what you mean by documentation? What kind of documentation is this,
Mm,
notes for meetings, something more specific?
sure, sure. So you've got to create some kind of a record that a conversation took place,
Mm.
and you want to have some kind of documentation that that person was there for that kind. It wasn't just you talking to yourself.
Sure, of
So
course.
either they sign it or you send it to them in an email, which shows that they received it. But you need to explain what the issue is, why it's a problem, and what your expectation of them is, and then what the consequences could be if things don't change. And like I said, this is a kind thing to do because it lets them know, oh my gosh, there's a real issue here. Um, so, and that documentation will help you because if they ever accuse you of not having communicated, or then you can show that you've had that conversation. It was a violation. You'll be able to show that, hey, I set out an expectation, they crossed that line, and I did
Mm.
what I said I was going to do, which is, further disciplinary action. And then you tend to have better outcomes in a legal stance.
Yeah, you're mentioning the legal aspect of it once again. So, uh, what do you mean exactly by that? So,
Mm.
what is that layer like? I think some of the watchlist ministers are going to be aware. Maybe many of them, not to the extent that they should be. Right? That's why we're interviewing experts like yourself. So, what
Yeah.
should they know?
Oh my goodness. Well, there's so many legal traps that you can fall into. So
Mm,
one of them being, someone can say that. Well, first of all, someone can say, "Hey, I thought I was gonna. You owe me a job. I've been here for so long," and they could make an argument in a court of law that basically, that their job should continue, and you've taken it away from them without due process. That's kind of a hard argument to take, but some people have tried to do that. Another one is some employees will say that I was terminated for false pretenses, meaning
mm,
you didn't really fire me because of my performance. You fired me because you didn't like the harassment allegations that I made, last month, or the workers' compensation claim that I made, a year ago. Or you didn't like the fact that I am a little bit older. So that's the biggest reason. That's the biggest protection. And so you can say, no, I've got documentation here. We talked about this, had nothing to do with your claims that you made, which we investigated thoroughly, by the way. And it had everything to do with these communications that we've done. Another example would be someone makes a claim. Let's say someone makes a claim of harassment, but they have been a poor performer. And this happens so often. A person who's not performing well and you've had conversations with them, then they make some kind of a claim. Now
mm.
it's very difficult to go back and say that they were a poor performer if you hadn't already documented that. And so you just have more risk. You put yourself at legal risk there. They could sue you under U.S. federal law um, for discrimination or any number of routes.
Okay, I see. So it all drives home the point of the importance of documentation. And can I just say, I mean, this isn't just on the dark side of HR, or on the side of on the side of these difficult situations that we have. I think it's also very important to document the wins as well, right?
Mm.
Just coming back. I guess I kind of want to leave the dark place for a
Oh
while.
gosh, thank you,
Uh,
thank you. Yeah.
that was stressful. So, you want to document the wins as well. You can't always give the feedback or like the kudos in person right away, right? But you still want to remember. I think people appreciate it very much. I know I do, where it's the end of the month or the end of the quarter, even, right? There's a
Yeah.
team meeting and somebody says, and the leader says that, I remember Jakub, for example, what you did in January, right? That really set us up for success throughout the rest of the quarter. So yes, I think it goes for both sides, but definitely, for the legal side of things and the risks that we mentioned, it's important as well. So
Mhm, mhm.
one thing that's crossing my mind related to all of this, I think, with discussing these kinds of topics, there's always the issue of bandwidth and capacity, right? Because some of the watchers and listeners are going to hear all of this and they're going to say, yes, I know I should be doing all of these things. Practicing gratitude, doing more documentation, maybe being more conscious or conscientious with my hiring process. But I'm just stretched so thin as a manager. Managers have it hard just in general, and in healthcare even more so. So I wonder if you have any, relevant advice for somebody who feels like they're stretched thin, how to take better care of themselves when they feel like they can't step back from things that much.
Yeah. So my first advice is the if you step back, then you will notice that it becomes easier to do the things that you're struggling with right now. And
Mhm.
so the reason you're struggling so hard could be because you haven't taken a step back. You
Mm.
haven't taken some time off. You haven't done the gratitude journal. You haven't exercised and gone for the walk. If you continue to grind down that knife, let's go back to the food analogy. If you
Sure.
have that cooking knife and you just keep grinding it and you're cutting through these tough, whatever, objects, bone and gristle and stuff, and you never sharpen it, it will just continue to get duller and duller. And you're going to say, man, why is cutting so hard? I don't get it. Well, you need to take like 5 minutes, sharpen that knife, and then now, oh wow, I find that I can cut way more, and now I have even more time to do a little sharpening, and I have a little time to read my cookbook, and now like cooking is actually a pleasure. Man, wasn't this brilliant how I brought this back to that?
Yes,
And so,
yes, it was.
and so taking time creates more time later. That's one thing that I'll say. Another thing that I'll say is going back to leadership. Find people on your team that you can trust with little tasks, right? What
Mhm.
can you delegate to people? Maybe I can delegate a task off of my plate, and guess what? Not only now am I getting that off my plate, now I'm developing someone to be a future leader. Okay, that's one thing. Now I'm
Sure.
also making that person more engaged in their work. They're going to be more likely to stay. They are going to be more likely to think about leadership and start motivating their team, right? So delegating things has a powerful advantage, and it's actually fun to pour into other people and cultivate them. That's research says that volunteering and giving to other people actually makes you feel better. So showing gratitude, mentoring people, these are things that you can do to not only help yourself, but help your team and help your whole clinic run better.
I absolutely love the framing of that, because in the past, when I was delegating stuff to people, I thought I was dumping work on them. But you
Mm,
would look at it completely differently. You're mentoring them, you're leveling them up, you're helping them acquire new skills in a way, provided that they still have the capacity, right? Because that can be a different conversation. But in a way, it is a lot of support and a lot of help for them for their future career. So I love how you kind of installed that in my brain, that you can look at it completely differently. And for the sharpen the knife metaphor, it reminds me of one of my favorite books, The Seven Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And that was the seventh habit. They were kind of two groups of three, and the seventh is sharpen the axe in
mm.
his case. So I think it was, I don't want to misquote, but I think it was something of like an Abraham Lincoln quote or something. Like if I were to chop down a tree in like a day, I would spend however many hours sharpening the
Right.
axe. Am I getting that right? Is that
Y-
is that?
yeah, I think you're right in there. You're right in there.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. So I will put a correction in the show notes if I got it wrong, because I personally hate when people get stuff wrong on the podcast and they never address it. But yes, that definitely makes a ton of sense. Make your body feel good. We mentioned the gym, we mentioned food and cooking, and these can feel like tangents for this sort of conversation. But honestly, we neglect the fact that we are physical bodies doing a lot of mental work too. But the walk helps so much. Good food helps so much. Good sleep helps so
Oh,
much. So
huge.
yeah, yeah. It's not the first time you're probably hearing this, Washers and Listeners. It's not even the first time we're talking about this on this show, which is like a year old at this point, which really drives home the importance of it. But anyway, thank you for sharing that on that topic. And one of the last stops I wanted to make with you here, as we slowly close off the conversation, is you're a podcast host. I'm so lucky that I got to interview a few other podcast hosts in recent weeks. So I definitely want to talk about Eye Care Leadership Live
Mm,
just a little bit.
sure.
Can you tell me about what it's been like hosting that show? The approach you have, what you learned throughout that show, either about running a show or from the guests that you've had.
Well, having a podcast has been just the funnest thing. I have to say, when I was a child, I would take these cassette tapes and I would record
Uh-huh.
myself pretending to be a radio DJ. And
That's
I'm
so
getting
cool.
to live my fantasy of being a radio host by doing
Mm.
podcasts. It's truly a childhood dream come true. So that's number one. Number two, it's been a wonderful way to connect with other people. So, Jakub, you and I have connected, and I feel like even here in this show, we have the music thing in common, we've got the food thing in common, we've got the Toastmasters thing in common. But having guests on my show has been just so fun to help me to get to know them and create a bond with them. And we're giving back. People that talk for a living or they talk as part of what they do, they want to share. They want to share the things that they know. And I just love giving people a way to do that. And yeah, just from a technical standpoint, it's just been kind of fun figuring it all out. And so if anyone has ever thought about having a podcast, I totally encourage you to give it a try. I would love to chat with you about how I did it or how I do it, and would love to see other people get into podcasting.
Yeah, I think so too. So a couple things I mean, I'm very passionate about this form. I even started my own personal podcast on the side. You have to message me on LinkedIn, watchers and listeners, to find out about that because I'm not putting that in the show notes. It's a secret, half secret. But either way, it definitely helps with making connections. It definitely makes for a good opener for making new connections in your career, which I think can be very very useful. And the deep conversations, look, you don't necessarily, if whether you're looking at a podcast for your career or just personal, you don't necessarily need to think about having a very large listener base.
Mm.
In many cases, for me, the deep conversation itself, kind of the connection that you make through that, what you learn, what the guest learns about themselves through the conversation, that is valuable in itself, even if not very many people see that, or you just send it to a few people about whom that conversation will be relevant to them. That is the one thing that I think people aren't seeing about podcasts. You don't have to be or try to be the most popular podcast in the world, and there are so many wonderful niches. I mean, yours is just eye care leadership. It would definitely be interesting for you to mention who you're looking for the
Yeah,
podcast in case anybody's listening.
absolutely. So I love talking to people who focus on ophthalmology and optometry. Anyone who wants to help ophthalmologists and optometrists run better practices is who I want to talk to. I've had optometrists, I've had ophthalmologists, I've had marketing leaders, I've had operations leaders, I've had coaches, mindset coaches. So,
Hmm.
if you have something to contribute to help people lead eye care better, I would love to chat with you. on tape.
Yeah, exactly. And live the radio host fantasy. I can definitely relate to that. And you said marketing leader, so what I'm hearing is there's a chance. Maybe we'll chat
There's
again.
there's a chance.
Excellent, excellent. That's so great. And well, I mean, there's a ton more we could touch upon. But I think at this point, I would ask you to kind of help the watchers and listeners find out more about you, find out more from you. Where can they access you, your content? Where can they find you so that we put it in the show notes and they stay in touch?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can search for me on LinkedIn, Mike Lyons. And if you want to add SPHR, that's the Senior Professional in HR certification. Mike Lyons, SPHR is a great way to find me on LinkedIn. I'm at seasoned-advice.com is my website. And
Great
then,
domain name. Can I just say great domain name?
oh, thank you. Thank you. And then the podcast, I Care Leadership Live, check it out on Apple, Spotify, YouTube. Would love to connect with you and learn more about what you do, great listeners out there.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely a great connection to have. I've listened to some episodes of your show and I really appreciate the diversity of guests you've had and some of I listened to a recent episode. I am blanking on the name of the guest, but I will put that episode in the show notes.
Mm,
Her approach, just in terms of a positive mindset, that was one of the recent ones. So
okay, sure.
maybe, yeah. So that one really inspired me, not just for my healthcare marketing career, but
Okay,
in general, in,
cool.
in, in general. So I'll put that in the show notes when I remind myself of that
Excellent.
episode. Yeah. So my insurance question, Mike. Anything else that you wanted to add on to what we discussed today for the people struggling with or maybe looking for ways to get better with management leadership that I neglected to ask you about that you wanted to also share
Hmm.
before we close out?
Um, get help, get help. We often try to
Get
do things.
therapy.
Yeah, get help. We often try to do things ourselves, and finding a great person to give advice. So many times in my life when I've been going through difficult moments,
Mm,
personal, professional, it was another person. It was another person who was able
yeah.
to give me an insight or advice, and that's what moves us forward in life. If you could do it all by I don't know anyone that's a truly self-made person. We've all learned from other people a lot, whether it was watching someone do it or having someone mentor us or a podcast or something we learned from a book. You don't come out of the womb knowing how to be awesome at the things you want to do. And so just
Yeah.
get help from someone and join a community or get a consultant or find a friend and commiserate and learn from each other.
Yeah, it all happens through connections. We're a social animal. It's been said. It might be trite advice, but honestly, it bears repeating. I'm gonna repeat it. And on the subject of nobody being self-made, on my personal podcast, that's like the leading thought. That's so interesting that you
Mm.
mentioned it in almost the exact same words. So yes, so that means I definitely agree with that. And I mentioned. I just want to say one thing. I mentioned therapy maybe in a joking manner, but actually that can be a big help if you're in a management position. I mean, working with a consultant like yourself, it can be a form of therapy as well. But definitely having somebody that you can safely talk with about your emotions around your work, that's really really useful.
Yeah.
So unironically, you might want to look into that, and that can really really help.
Just one other book I'll mention. A book that transformed my life is Change Your Brain, Change Your Life by Dr. Daniel Amen. I think it's Daniel Amen. And it's all about, at least the thing that I took from that, is changing your automatic thoughts. We have these
Mm,
automatic negative thoughts that pop into our brains. And when we start to realize that they're there and change them, it has a transformative effect on our leadership. And yeah, a great therapist can help you to recognize those automatic thoughts and do things about them. So I'll double click on that, Jakub.
excellent. Yes, and I'm so glad that we added that in before we closed off the conversation. Really loved this episode, Mike. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Really enjoyed this conversation we had, and I can't wait to publish this episode. So that'll be it for today, watchers and listeners. Definitely go check out Mike. You'll find everything in the show notes that we mentioned, as well as the books that we talked about. And for both this show, Scaling Practice Management, and for iCare Leadership Live, don't forget to click follow and subscribe and all those other stuff, all those other buttons that give us podcast hosts a nice, good hit of dopamine, and they keep us going. So definitely
Thank you.
100% that. Yes. So thank you, Mike, and thank you, watchers and listeners, so much for joining us here today. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode with me and Jakub Grajcar from Scaling Practice Management. I know it was a really long episode, but Jakub is such a engaging host, and I think we touched on so many cool topics that I had such a good time. I hope you enjoyed it. Anyway, this has been iCare Leadership Live, and we'll see you on the next show.